Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, a CENELEC webinar, introducing you the new CENELEC BOSS page and providing you information about preparation and submission of your files in particular. So this webinar is for CENELEC drafters. You might know that this morning we organized a similar webinar for CEN drafters. So should you be interested, the recording is already available. We will also record this webinar, so you will be provided with the link to the recording and the presentation later today. My name is Else, and I will be moderating the webinar in the background while my colleague is going through the whole presentation and the demonstrations. So, as usual, you're all muted during the presentation, so you cannot ask your questions out loud, but you do have the possibility to enter your questions in the Q&A panel of this Zoom webinar. So please submit your questions over there, and the speaker will have a look at your questions and reply as many questions as possible. Should you be on Twitter, feel free to tweet about the subject. We are available at Standards for EU, and you can use the hashtag Training for Standards. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Amy, who is very knowledgeable about this new CENELEC BOSS page. So please, Amy, without further ado, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Els. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will indeed be talking about the new page on the CENELEC BOSS site, which is the preparation and submission of files. So we'll talk to you about the new page. I'll give you an introduction, what's there. We'll take a quick look at it, and I'll also explain why it's important for you as well. So why you should be excited about this. We'll take a quick look over the page just so that I can show you what's actually there, so you can acquaint yourself with all of the resources. And then we'll take a little look at the CENELEC simple template, because we have a new quick start guide available for you to make things a little bit easier. So I'll show you where you can find them, and also again explain why this is important for you. So let's take a look at the page. So preparation and submission of files. What is it? Well, it's a whole new page for you that we've drafted. Beforehand, there was absolutely nothing there. There was no information for you at all. So we've created something. There will be more applicable and relevant information for you that's nice and up to date. We cover the basic drafting guidance on key points. So anything that you need to know about drafting a deliverable, we cover there. We've got lots of downloadable resources for you as well, in terms of Word documents, PDF files, checklists, all of that kind of stuff. We've compiled an FAQ section based on some of the frequently asked questions that we get from you. So you can be sure that that is up to date with information that you actually want and need. And we also give you some clear examples of how to do things, some how-tos. So we've really tried to make this as easy for you to use as possible. But why is this important? Well, we keep it up to date with the rules according to the most recent edition of the Internal Regulations Part 3. So in this case, it's the 2022 edition that was published in July. So we want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date rules with regards to that. We also want to make sure that there is some clear guidance for the drafting as well, which is important because we've had a lot of tools that have changed, been updated, introduced, and we want to make sure that you can use those as efficiently as possible. So really, it's important for you for two separate reasons. But now let's take a look at the page itself. So in the presentation, you have the direct link. So if you click this, it'll take you straight to it. But I would like to show you how to get there from the main BOSS page itself. So I'm just here on boss.cenelec.eu. This is the splash page. We go to reference material. We go to guidance documents right here, and then drafting guidance. And you can see down here, it's a nice new page, preparation and submission of files. So we click that and we have this beautiful shiny new page containing all the information. So a few things first. So this page provides guidance on the key elements to be prepared and submitted to CCMC for all deliverables. So that is important. This is not just for regular European standards, but also for technical reports and technical specifications too. And it's mainly applicable for the inquiry and the formal vote stage as well. So this doesn't cover publications. We also give you a brief overview of the key drafting aspects taken directly from the CENELEC Internal Regulations Part 3. So over on the right-hand side, there's a new drop-down menu. So there's the Internal Regulations Part 3, if you need any additional detailed guidance. So you can just click that and it should open a new PDF for you. We then have a reference document, which is the figures supplement. So this will make more sense in a little bit when I talk to you about this. And then forms and templates, where you can find the CENELEC standard template. I will refer to this also as the simple template, but the two are interchangeable as well. So the page itself, we start off with a general clause. So we've tried to keep the structure of this as close to a European deliverable as possible. So we start off with a general clause that tells you everything you need to submit to us. So for example, we need a revisable format of the text in Word, we need a PDF document. The figure files are optional. If you have them available, you can provide them to us if you want to. This supplementary guidance on figures we'll talk about in a little while, but it's worth noting they are optional, but it's strongly recommended if you have your figure files to send them to us as well. That's quite important. If your document is harmonized, there are certain aspects that you need to provide as well in addition. So for inquiry and formal vote, there's some rules there. There's also a checklist as well that you need to provide if your document's harmonized too. So all of that's in one clear place for you. We also tell you that the failure to provide these components will be, your submission will be rejected. Yeah, we also mentioned the submission interface. So historically, for CENELEC, text was supposed to be submitted via email, whereas now we have the new submission interface, which really you should be using. There is a dedicated webinar on that I recommend you take a look at, but the submission interface is right here, so this will take you directly there. So we then talk about each element in depth. So the revisable format of the Word text, of the text version, sorry. So it shall be drafted using Microsoft Word, using the latest version of the drafting template provided by CENELEC, which we do keep updated. Clean, no track changes. Any information addressed directly to the editors needs to go into the comment section of the submission interface. Historically, this was the transmission notice, but now there's no transmission notice. It is the submission interface. So be aware of that. Anything that's not drafted within the simple template or the standard template will be rejected. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And we also tell you how to name it correctly as well. Then the non-revisable PDF, we tell you why you need to have this, because we've never really told you why, we've only told you what you need to provide. So the reason we ask you for a PDF is so that the editor can see the figures, how they're supposed to be laid out, and so that we can compare if the correct figures being used, if you have them. Any formulae, these are easily corrupted. Any formatting of the text, if it's bold, if it's aligned a certain way, we can see that. We can see what your intentions were. We don't allow any track changes or sticky notes, anything like that. It has to be a nice clean version for us. And we also give you the naming convention again. And also you can use Acrobat Distiller, but we do also tell you in the quick start guide a little later on how you can do the PDF without this tool as well. Figure files, as I've mentioned in CENELEC, they are optional. You don't need to provide them to us, but it's recommended if you do have them, do provide them, because it makes the editor's life a lot easier, since we can't really create the figures ourselves here in any easy way. And it allows us to introduce some errors where possible, which we don't want. There are certain rules with regards to the linking and insertion of figures if you have them. I recommend that you take a look again at that submission interface webinar, because those rules are quite important to do it properly in order to get your text through the submission interface. However, if you do have problems with this, you can contact production@cenelec.eu, and my colleagues over there will be more than happy to help you if you are still having some problems. But it's all explained right here for you. So then we have drafting the text. So when you start drafting, you have two potential starting points. Either you're starting new work or you're revising an existing deliverable. So if you're starting something new, that means there's no previous version of the text. So you have to write it directly into the standard template itself. So it's as simple, if I click this, it downloads it for me. And then I can open this, and it's a flat Word document. It's good to go. We'll talk more about this, the simple template shortly. You obviously have to follow the rules given in the internal regulations part 3. We do have a number of webinars, a series for standards drafters that highlight all of the main rules within the internal regulations part 3. So that's also a very good starting point too. If, however, you're revising an existing deliverable, you have two options. So if you're drafting an inquiry text, you can take the publication text and use that. So that is the text that CCMC published. So it's also the text that CCMC edited. If, however, you're drafting for the formal vote, you have to use the inquiry text. Now, if you don't have these or you can't find them on projects online, you're struggling with that, or you're not sure that it is the edition that CCMC edited, you can always just write to production, or if you have the direct contact point of an editor, you can contact them and somebody will be happy to send you the text that we edited. So once again, we have links to the webinars for Standards Drafters series. These will be updated this year, so keep your eyes out for the updated links, the invitations. We also have links here to projects online too. Some information and details on what to do if you have a second enquiry text or a form of vote text. So it should all be nice and clear for you. So finally, we then cover other drafting aspects. So this is a very, very basic overview of the key components of the text, because other components have their own rules for drafting. So it's just an overview of things to consider, things to check when you're drafting. So we start with clause 1, 2, and 3. These are obligatory clauses, so they're quite important. So even if they're empty, you have to have them. Of course, your scope won't be empty, hopefully. But certainly clause 2 and clause 3, if they're empty, you still have to have them there. We do have specific introductory wording for both cases. You can find these in the internal regulations part 3. And what's nice about this section is where there is additional information to be found in the internal regulations part 3, we give you the specific clause as well. So if you want more information on normative references, and this isn't quite enough for you, you can always head over to clause 15 and take a look there. The same thing with the clause 3, terms and definitions. We give you the exact clause. So we really tried to make this as informative and as useful as possible for you, as clear as possible as well. Some on formulae, and then we also have this is very new, inclusive language, clause 3.5. So inclusive language just refers to language that is neutral, so i.e. non-gender specific, and should be used where possible. So this was taken from clause 8.6 of the internal regulations part 3, and we've given you some examples. For example, chairman should be chair or chairperson, that kind of thing. It's just for you to know that is a new rule from the most recent edition of the internal regulations part 3. So bear that in mind. And then finally, when you finish, where do you need to send your text? What do you need to do? So we've given you all the information there. So I'd like to go back just to this figures supplement, because obviously, as we've said, figures are entirely optional, but there may be the chance that you can provide them to us, in which case they do need to follow certain rules. And we wanted you to have this information to hand in a clear and concise manner. So it is quite a long document, but it contains really everything that you would need to know about figures and graphics. So we start off with a brief overview of what constitutes a figure, what constitutes a graphic. The reason why we have these specific rules for figures is because CCMC is obliged to provide XML for 100% of applicable deliverables. And if we don't have the figure files, we can't provide that XML file. So it helps us to ensure that we can provide that extra file within the standards package. So we really go in depth. We talk to you about what comprises a figure, what elements are contained therein. Obviously, not all of these will be used, but this is what can be contained in there. We talk about the numbering and the layout. We show you where this information is in the internal regulations part 3 as well. There are plenty of examples throughout too. So here, for example, we have the correct layout of a figure. So this is how they should look. Plenty of examples, numbering and layout of subfigures. I won't go through this in too much detail because it is it's quite detailed. But just to give you an idea, we tell you how to format your keys as well, and how to format any notes that you might have in there, especially if you have multiple notes, because these rules are different to main body text notes, for example, as well. If there's any explanations to figures 2, how to style these, how to lay these out. So really everything that you need to know is contained in here if you wish to use it as well. We then also have general technical rules, because there are some technical things that you need to be aware of if you do provide the figures. So for example, the image boundaries have to conform to a set of rules. The scaling as well is important. How to check the output size of figures. We show you how to do this with plenty of screenshots. And this is all things that the CCMC editors do in-house as well. So everything in this is what your editors do. We talk about the naming, the numbering of figures, naming, how to name your files too, so the editors know which figure needs to go where. And then we have specific requirements for TIFF files. So if you do provide the figures, they have to conform to this. So clause 3.3 is very important. Same thing with EPS files. They're no longer accepted in Word, they're no longer supported, so they're no longer accepted by CENELEC. It's worth for you to know that. There's also information about linking your figures, the procedure on how to do it. Again, I won't go over this in too much detail because it's very detailed. Image quality check tool might be useful as well. This is also included in the submission interface. So you may be met with this. We show you how to read the Excel report that you'll receive once you upload your figures as well. So it's worth taking a look through this just so that you're not met with any surprises. It shows you how to troubleshoot as well. So it's all very interesting stuff. So it's worth taking a scroll through this just to see what's in there. Again, this is not obligatory for CENELEC. So if you don't have these figures, it's completely fine. If you do have them, this is there to help you. Just a final note on auto shapes and word shapes. They're not supported by XML. They have to be removed, but sometimes they can insert themselves randomly. So we show you how to get rid of those as well, because is something that regularly trips people up. So that's everything on the preparation and submission of files. This page should be really useful for you. As I say, we've tried to keep everything as clear as possible, so that when you do start drafting, you've got all the good information that's up to date and that's clear as well. And then finally, right at the bottom, we have a beautiful FAQ. Now, these are based on questions that we actually get from TCs and from drafters, from committees, from all kinds of people. So we hope that this is more useful for you. So you simply click on your question, it gives you a hopefully very clear and concise answer. I'd just like to highlight this one, however. So about drafting a technical specification or report, do these rules apply? And they do apply, but for technical reports, there are additional rules. So you can refer to the internal regulations part 3 for this, but we also did a webinar where we explained the new rules for you, including what this means for drafting too. So it's worth just making yourself aware of that if you do plan to draft a technical report. So if we go back to our presentation and continue on, we now have the CENELEC simple template and the guide, or the standard template as it's also known. So the CENELEC simple template, it is obligatory template to use for both new work and revised deliverables. Now we know this can be quite a lot of work, but once you do the work just one time, it's done then. We don't need to do it again. This does include TS and TR, and we're looking into the possibility of having something for amendments too, but right now we're still researching that. But certainly for EN, TS, and TR, it is obligatory to use the template. It's a good thing for you to use because it includes all of the applicable styling for that XML file. Even if you don't have the figures, it's good to use the styles that are in there. In addition to that, it also helps you with the layout of each element. So some elements can be a bit tricky to lay out properly. It can help you with that. It gives you guidance on the drafting and what isn't allowed, because sometimes the internal regulations part 3 can be a little bit vague. So hopefully it should help you. And we've designed it to be effectively plug and play. So you can download it. It's an open, a flat Word document. You just open it and type straight in, or you copy and paste your previous document in there if you're revising a deliverable. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to use, because we're aware that not everybody knows Word as well as the editors do here. We also have this link right here, which is a dedicated webinar on the simple template, where I take you through the downloading of it right the way through to the drafting, how to style things, that kind of thing. So that could be interesting for you to take a look at. What's new about this is the quick start guide. So we created a downloadable PDF for you, which really goes into depth about how to use the template if you're interested. So how to use it, how to style everything correctly with some handy tips and tricks. And as with the boss page, we will keep this updated in line with the IR3 as well. So you can guarantee that the information in there will be up to date and useful. So where can I find the simple template? Like with the boss page, I've given you the direct link here, but I'll just go back and show you where you can find it if you don't have access to this link. So we come to the home page, we go to reference material at the top, And then you have forms and templates right here. And you go to technical work, and we have all of this. And it's right here, the CENELEC simple template for drafting standards. We also have a French and German version too. So this, if I click, it just downloads it for me again. The quick start guide itself opens as a PDF. So that opens for me in Chrome like this. It takes a moment to load. So this quick start guide is very, very detailed. We've tried to lay it out like a European deliverable as best we can. So these are clickable links. So if you don't want to read through all of this, you don't have to. So we go from the very beginning. So you've downloaded the CENELEC standard template. What do you do next? So we give you some little brief history on why it's important. And then we go into using the template itself. So the structure is the same all the way through, but we start off really basic. So we show you how firstly to do things like make your paragraph markers visible, which is a very good tool to use. It's what all of the editors in CCMC do. We have this little paragraph marker visible. We show you how to find the styling palette too, so that you can keep that open while you're drafting. We explain the styles to you as well. We show you how to see the applied styles. So effectively how to set your Word window, your Word document up so that you can see basically what the editors see in-house when we check your styles. So we go through all of that. It's very interesting. And then something that I quite like about this, the European foreword can sometimes be a little confusing to know what you need to fill out, what you can leave, what you need to delete. So we've explained all of this to you as clearly as we possibly could. And you'll find in the simple template itself that there's red text and you can delete that, you can edit that as you need. So this is designed to be used in tandem with that. And the structure is the same throughout. So for every element that we have, so in this case, it's the European foreword, we show you how to style it. So for example, the title is forward title, the text is forward text, and any lists that are in there, which would be these things right here, they're styled as list continue. And we go through and we do that for every single thing. So the introduction, what is it? How do you style it? This is how you do it. Same thing, the scope, what is it? This is how to style it. So this really, really is a very useful tool for you, and you can download and keep this so you can refer back to it as many times as you need to. We cover all of the main things that you might need as well, how to lay out figures, how to style them, formulae as well. One thing I'd like to note with formulae and equations is we're aware that not everybody has access to MathType, which is a paid software add-in. So we show you how to build these with the equation builder. So we've really gone into detail with this. Same thing with annexes, bibliography. And now Annex A and B. These are really, really useful for you. So Annex A is a list of useful information sources. So for example, we have the webinar series. So these are the current ones from 2020, but these will be updated to be the 2023 version once we host them. And then there's also the simple template webinar as well. So that might be useful. Also, the internal regulations part 3 link is right here. We do need to update this. We haven't done so yet. And then if you're still stuck, if you've gone through this, if you've gone through the webinars, if you're really still pulling your hair out and you don't know where to go, we've told you who to contact and when. So mail production or your CCMC contact point, which could be your editor or it could be a technical sectoral PM as well. So hopefully you find that useful. So now back to the presentation. So some FAQs that we have. If you've used all the resources that I've mentioned today and you're still stuck, you can contact production@cenelec.eu directly and somebody will help you. Either it will be your editor or it will be one of my lovely production colleagues who are very, very informative. If you'd like some specific drafting guidance, CCMC editors can offer tailored trainings to suit your specific needs. If you have a draft that you're working on right now and you want somebody just to take a look to make sure you're on the right track, or you have specific questions, that kind of thing, you can contact production directly and they'll put you in contact with an editor, or you can contact your editor directly if you have somebody's contact details. And I've mentioned the webinars a few times through this, so you can find the most recent series here. I've made it as simple as possible for you. And as I said, keep your eyes peeled for the new drafting series coming this year. So we've got some questions in, so we're just going to take a moment or two to take a look at what's here, and we'll be right back shortly. Okay, so the first question that we have is, when working on a revision, the base document used is, of course, the last published edition to make necessary changes. What if this last edition is not in the standard template? So in this instance, we would ask that you take the time to copy and paste that previous published edition into the standard template. We know it can be quite a lot of work, but once the work has been done, it doesn't generally need to be done again, especially if you use the edition that CCMC provides for future drafts, if that makes sense. So what I would recommend you do is, as you go through the document to revise it, as you revise it, just paste it into the simple template. It's a little bit tedious, a little bit laborious, but once it's done, you don't need to do it again. And if you'd like us to take a look over and check anything, please do get in touch. Okay, the final question that we have in, is it possible to reintroduce acronym? Could you clarify what you mean by that? Because we're not too sure. We'd be more than happy to answer if you could give us some more information, a specific example or something like that. That would be great. Okay, clarification on, I think it's the abbreviations clause that you mean. Yeah, so the terms and definitions clause is obligatory. So if there's no terms and definitions in there, you still have to have that clause in there. The reasoning behind it is, it's effectively a placeholder if it's empty. So if you revise a standard in the future, or maybe you go from inquiry to formal vote and you realize, hey, I need to add a term and definition in here. To save you the work of restructuring and reorganizing, renumbering everything, the placeholder is effectively there for now, for future drafts, future editions, that kind of thing. If you have abbreviations in there too, you can add them to clause 3 if you want to, or you can have them as a clause 4. That's entirely up to you. The terms and definitions can be, as you say, terms, definitions, and abbreviations. That's entirely up to you, that structure, but the abbreviations clause isn't obligatory, just the terms and definitions. So it's up to you where you want to put it.
Okay, thank you, Amy. That was actually the last question. One more question just came in. As promised, we will make available the recording for you as well as the presentation. So please don't worry, you can still listen back or have a look at the presentation and click on the hyperlinks as they were provided by Amy during this webinar. I don't know, Amy, if you would still like to reply the last question.
Yes, we can take the final one. So this is one thing that we do have in CENELEC an awful lot is who really should do the work with regards to the transformation, the copy paste of these texts into the simple template. And what we ask is that the drafters try and do as much of that work as possible, not because we don't want to do anything, of course that's not the case, but because if we are left to do that work, we can introduce errors where we don't mean to, because the editors, we have some technical knowledge, but not in the same way that you do. So if we introduce an error to, for example, a formulae and it's not picked up, it can get very difficult to try and change things. And that's not what we want to do. So if you can do as much of the work as possible, which is why we make it sort of as easy as possible, or we try to make it as easy as possible for you, the risk of delay, the risk of errors being introduced, nasty surprises for you if you provide us something that that's maybe different to what we circulate to the vote or to the ballot. Also for XML purposes as well, there are many different reasons why at the drafting stage, you should try and do as much as possible. Of course, the editors do check. We do try to do as much as we can too. But our goal ultimately is to spend as much time on the technical content to make sure that it conforms to the internal regulations part 3 as well. So instead of it being all on you, all on us, we try to make it more of a collaborative effort. So I hope that helps. We're always at your disposal if you do need any help. If the resources that we provide still aren't quite what you need, do just get in touch and we're more than happy to help. But it should be a collaboration for sure.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I think with this, we can close down the webinar for today. I hope it has been useful for everybody. And as promised, we'll make available the material as soon as possible. So thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye-bye.